Okay, welcome everybody. I think we are all set. The technicalities in the beginning was because we are streaming the talk and we have listeners in Finland and other countries, and we are really happy about that. Welcome everybody to Badaro Talks. This is the lecture series that the Finnish Institute has established some 2 years ago or something when I came here, and the idea is to introduce different topics and different speakers that somehow have links to Finland. Sorry, I'm a specialist of Yemen myself. So my name is Susanne Dahlgren, and I'm a director of the Finnish Institute here. I'm an anthropologist and specialize on Yemen. And I'm really happy to have Nina with us, who is an osteoarchaeologist and studies really different era than what I do. And I'm really looking forward to listening what she can tell about the important excavations in Sidon and Saida here in Lebanon, and introducing what she actually does in her studies. You are most welcome all here, and I can see that there are very new faces here, and also that our audience has become a little bit younger. I'm very happy.
Get them while they're young, that's all.
Yeah, so Nina, the floor is yours.
Thank you. All right. So I'll give a very brief, general kind of explanation on the Middle Bronze Age and the stuff that we do, but please, at any point, if you have any questions, just ask, and I'll answer right away, or you can ask them afterwards, whichever works for you. And I'll trust you to do the same thing. It's like, what is this thing that you keep mentioning? And, oh, of course, it's this obvious thing that you've probably never heard about. But because I'm an osteoarchaeologist, a little bit of a content warning for some people. There will be some images of human remains. No worries, nothing exceedingly gory or anything, just a couple of burial pictures of people, how they were placed in graves and commemorated at the time of death. And we're going to go to Saida. I have a feeling that everybody in this room knows where Saida is, but maybe for the people in the interwebs, Saida is on the coast of Lebanon, about 40 kilometers south of Beirut. It has had many names over the years, and I think because the excavation that my material comes from is called the Sidon Excavation Project, so I'm probably going to be talking about Sidon rather than Saida during the excavation. So in case you're wondering, are these two same places? Yes, they are. And there has been occupation in Saida for quite a while, and also excavations for some time. So over 100 years, there have been different things happening. In the city itself, not as many. But then when you go around Sidon as well, you have places like Temple of Eshmun, which are also very interesting and very important archaeological sites. So the place that we will be talking about today is actually this college site, which used to have a school before, and the school building itself was demolished in the early 60s. It was acquired by the DGA to be used for research purposes at some point in time. There was a little bit of like a survey excavation at the time, or very closely afterwards, but nothing major, and it wasn't until the late 90s that we really start to do something really interesting in Sidon, and it turns out into this full-blown excavation that has now been going on for how many decades? It's like it's on its 4th decade, basically, right?
28 years.
Yeah. So and I've only been involved with the project since 2017. So when I walk into the site, my mind is just blown with all the things that you can see in it. These images are already, I think, 20 years old at this point, and you can see how much has been done, how much has been excavated. These pillars right here are remnants of the old school. So that is all going into the archaeology. And so this really shows you this continuous use of this land, of Saida, from the past all the way to the present. There's really not that much of disruption. From Sidon, we know that there has been human occupation already during the Chalcolithic period, so we're going back thousands of years. And from this, there seems to be evidence of humans being at the site continuously throughout this time. And before we go into the period of our interest, which is during the Bronze Age, I want to give a little bit of a shout out to a colleague of mine, Richard Mikulski, who's worked on a different assemblage, human remains assemblage from this site, but it's from a later period, so it's from the Crusader period. But this article that he produced is very interesting, and if you're all into knights or anything like that, you will love it. You will. So, the Bronze Age. So we're going to go back 3,500 years or so into the past, because we are looking at the Middle Bronze Age. However, the Bronze Age period itself, we don't know quite exactly when it started. Some people say it started maybe 3,700 years ago, some say 3,200 years ago. I think the National Museum here in Beirut uses 3,200, which is more than fair enough, because I think these numbers, they kind of change with what sites you're looking at and who you're talking to, because it's all about what happens where at a certain time. But what distinguishes the Bronze Age from all the other periods? And that is already, it's already in the name itself. So you have this new technology, bronze, coming into play. Probably alongside this, or maybe even spurred by this, you have urbanization. So you have these settlements that are turning into urban spaces. So there's more, perhaps neighborhood building, more specialized areas, and you also have the sea. And this is a really important element of the Bronze Age in general. You cannot really talk about, especially the Levantine Bronze Age, you cannot really talk about it without thinking about how it connects to the sea and seafaring. And this shows a couple of different sites along the coast in Lebanon. However, this entire Levantine coast became populated with people, with sites, and many of these, for instance, Byblos, Beirut, Sidon, Tyre, all are places with natural anchorages, which means that ships are able to dock offshore and then row into land with smaller boats to transfer cargo back and forth. And this is really, really important. It's already in the early Bronze Age. What people are moving in these boats and in these cargoes, it's a lot of copper and tin, go figure. But anything that interests people will get shifted over. So can be wine, olive oil. One of my favorites, which is this picture right here. So this is the solar barge that was buried next to the Great Pyramid of Khufu. It's almost entirely made out of Lebanese cedar. And this is 2500 BC, so 4,500 years ago, which I think is just amazing. So you have really wide scale, like big scale trading happening very early in the early Bronze Age already. And then you get to our period, which is the Middle Bronze Age. And this is, let's see, yes. So the Middle Bronze Age is where everything kind of locks into place. Or that's how I see it from the human remains perspective, at least. Because whenever I see data from the early Bronze Age, what I see is people seem to be much more dispersed in terms of their, for instance, isotope results. I'll talk about stable isotopes in a moment, so you know exactly what I'm talking about. But basically what they look like, they look like they're coming from a much wider area and then settling into one place. And then in the Middle Bronze Age, they all kind of seem to cluster together. And so maybe this is that process of urbanization and settlement happening, and then it really sets into place during the Middle Bronze Age and then starts to flourish. And so the Middle Bronze Age is known for growth in every sense. You have sites start to grow, there are more of them, trade is more intensified, and there's more craft production, and the list goes on and on. In Sidon, you can see evidence of the same thing happening. So probably by the end of the Middle Bronze Age, or maybe the beginning of the Late Bronze Age, there's a little bit of evidence in the shore, or in the shore, showing that people were artificially starting to modify the structures. And so this is, to me at least, this is an indicator that there's a reason why you want to put so much labor into something that's so extensive. And that is, you want to ensure all-season access, and you want to get even more business coming your way. And you can really see this in Sidon as well. You have evidence from long-distance trade. You have trade from Egypt, from Crete, Cyprus, the wider Levantine area as well. And then we have the burials from this time period as well. And this is where a lot of these materials are coming from, and you can already see this accumulation of wealth as well. There are quite a few burials in the Middle Bronze Age. So some of them are disturbed, some of them are undisturbed. So our estimation is that there are over 200 individuals currently that we have excavated from the Sidon College site. There are three main burial types. Constructed burials are either mud brick or stone lined. These are usually single inhumations as well, at least in the beginning, and then they can shift. Jar burials, which are almost exclusively for children. I say almost. And then you have pit burials, which are kind of reserved for anyone who can potentially be buried in them. The burials often contain vessels or some kind of meal offering, so this can be pig, sheep, goat, bovine. But we also have some very interesting, unusual finds like dog or bird bones, or sometimes shark teeth or shark remains and rays, and a lot of fish as well. A lot of these Sidon burials contain fish. And then we have luxury items. So these can be things like jewelry. They can be made out of gold or silver, sometimes beads, so different like carnelians or something else. And you may also have weapons. And because this is a burial site that was used for hundreds of years, we have a shift in burial customs throughout this time. So people are doing different things at slightly different time periods, but it all kind of flows into this continuum. And I loved using the word continuum. You're going to hear a lot of it during this presentation. But in the beginning, most of these inhumations are singular, so you have one person per grave. A lot of them have weapons or other like high ticket items, like silver or jewelry. And then a little bit later, you see this emergence of collective burials. So multiple people are buried in the same grave, still with a lot of stuff. The Middle Bronze Age people, or Bronze Age people in general, just love stuff. They like to take it with them and put as much of it in their graves as they could. And the interesting thing about these collective burials is the fact that that's also when you see this new feature at the cemetery, which is the ritual feasting. So people are going to the cemetery and they're having meals with the dead. So they are getting venerated. And this is something that continues for multiple generations until around phase 6, which is when it kind of ebbs out from the burial site itself. And there's a monumental building that gets erected at the site. And this is where we found evidence of animal remains and broken vessels. And so it looks like this is where they then decided to get this, to continue this tradition. So again, you see this like flow of how things are going. One of the things that I, as an osteoarchaeologist, am interested in is whether these people were locals or non-locals, because obviously you have a site that has a lot of trade, so you would expect people to be coming from elsewhere, maybe more than usual, and there's also a lot of connections between different sites, so then obviously your first question is, well, if there's a lot of artifacts coming, are the people coming with them, and are they staying? And for this, to answer this, we have a couple of different ways to approach the question. One of the kind of one of the key ways to do this currently in archaeology is to look at stable isotopes, and the other one is to look at biological relatedness of people. And this is actually where it starts to get a little bit technical. Sorry. So, I have gifts. So I am, so everybody online, like apologies, I cannot give these to you. Maybe you can get a stress ball or something, but I have something to show you. So these are items that we've been able to print from Sidon. And maybe you can fidget with them while I'll do some more talking. And if you're really good with your eyes, you might actually be able to identify some of these items from the presentation slides. So first off, I'm going to talk about stable isotopes, and without going into any kind of chemistry lesson, I'm just going to go with a very top-level explanation, and that is that you are what you eat. So anything that you put in your body, anything that you consume, is made out of, or tells something about you in terms of stable isotopes. There are four major stable isotopes that are get used in archaeology, and that is nitrogen and hydrogen. These are used for dietary estimations, and then you have strontium and oxygen, which are useful for migration and mobility. All of them have different pathways that they use to enter your body or where they come from. So I'll just give you one, and that will kind of tell you, or that can maybe kind of exemplify how it works. But, so strontium, for instance, which is what I'm going to show you in a moment anyway. So strontium values derive from the bedrock, and different types of bedrock have different types of strontium value. It's also a little bit dependent on the age of the bedrock as well. But once we know the values of the bedrock, we can start kind of extrapolating data from that. When the bedrock erodes, the values go into the soil. From the soil, it gets absorbed by the plants. The plants get eaten by humans and animals, and then obviously humans also eat the animals. And that is how the strontium value then ends up in your body, and it's what you are made of. So when we find a skeleton, we can use a couple of different things. So we can either take a bone sample, so here's a piece of a rib, and that will tell us about an average of maybe from the 10 last years of your life, because every bone in your body will remodel in about 10 years, or an average of 10 years. So you're basically a whole new person every 10 years. And then, except of course your teeth, because once your teeth are formed, they're locked in. And teeth form during childhood, which means that we have a potential point of data from the last 10 years of your life, and then from your childhood. For the study that we did on Sidon, we used mainly teeth, and so this tells us where these people were located during childhood. According to Christantis, who was the lead of this analysis, when she plotted all the individuals, she did both strontium and oxygen, which both can be used in combination to look at mobility. What she noted was that people are very closely clustered, and there are only a few potential outliers, aka people who do not fall within the local or the main of the group. And when we split it further into different phases or time periods at the symmetry, we could tell that there's not that much of a difference. So all of this kind of suggests that most of the Sidonians that we have sampled, at least, they are from a very similar place, or they're very local. Now, there is one kind of trouble or problem with the Levantine area. It's a very homogeneous bedrock, which means that you can have someone coming from even 100 kilometers or hundreds of kilometers away, and they look very similar to other people. So just with this one line of evidence, we can kind of say something, but our picture is still pretty blurry, so it would be good to have more information. And this is where the biological relatedness comes into play. So you can either do DNA, but DNA requires really good preservation, and it requires potentially very deep pockets, especially if you have a lot of samples. So what you can do is you can use proxy data, and this is something that you can collect from the physical remains just by visually observing them, and then using that to kind of give an idea of the morphological similarity of those people, which then tells you about their genetic relationship as well. Obviously, the trick to this is that you need to use features that have a high heritability rate. So something that really transfers from the parent to the child. So not something that maybe kind of sort of might do that. In my line of work, one of the best sources is to use teeth. Teeth are highly heritable, or tooth morphology and tooth traits are pretty heritable. And they also preserve really nicely because they're mostly made out of mineral. So even if everything else is kind of crumbly, usually you at least have like a handful of teeth, and you can already do so much stuff. So not only can you do all of the isotope work that I was talking about, now you can also look at how people are related to one another. Here's a couple of examples of the type of stuff that you can record from teeth. This is just one first molar, so it'll be right there. And you can look at these extra cusps that are right here at the margin. You can look at the size of the cusps, because that's very variant. You can have extra cusps as well. By the way, Carabelli cusp, very common and prominent in this area of the world. I keep recording it from Egypt, from Jordan, from Lebanon, from Syria. Seems everybody has it at some grade or another. And then here you can actually even see like a little cusp 5. So lots and lots of cusps. From one person, you can record. I think there are over 100 different traits that you can record. 40 of those are considered really good for biodistance analysis, or this kind of like looking at relatedness. So that's what we did with the Sidon material as well. I recorded all of the traits from each individual, the ones that I could, and then a bunch of statistical magic happens. So there are multiple steps. You have to make sure that your traits are not correlated with one another. They have to be independent. They have to have enough variation so that they're not skewing your data, blah, 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 blah. The list goes on and on and on. But what you get at the other end, after your multivariate statistical analysis, is a distance profile for each individual. And this is one of those distance matrices plotted out on a map so that you can actually visually observe it. And again, kind of what you can see is if you forget about the lines and just look at the points, they're all kind of in like this nice ball cluster again, which kind of is very similar to that isotopes cluster as well. So nothing really that really separates people from one another. But then, what I also wanted to see is like, okay, do we have any differences based on time period? So these are clustered together, so you have phases 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 5 and 6, just to kind of keep it even. And each of these is a mean of that group. And they line up more or less in a linear fashion. And what this suggests is that people are slowly becoming more similar or more dissimilar from each other. And this is something that is suggested of genetic drift, and this is normal in stable populations. So people slowly change just because of the factor of time. So again, another point to kind of say that not a lot of migration, people are closely related, and it makes sense considering that you have this very small burial ground, and people do like to bury their family members close to each other, right? So, there's a couple of different theories on what could be an explanation for the low number of migration. So one would be that, considering that we have 200 individuals, and Sidon was already starting to become a very big bustling harbor at this point, we probably have more burials and more burial grounds somewhere else. So maybe if we do have outsiders or newcomers coming in, they might be buried somewhere else. We simply don't know because that data is buried still somewhere under the current city of Saida. But the thing that I really also find interesting with this is that you have a lot of stability throughout the Middle Bronze Age. And again, my favorite buzzword, continuity. So you have continuity all the way throughout this time period, and we all know that later Sidon becomes a very major Phoenician port. So this must come from somewhere. It doesn't spur out of nothing. So the foundations of this later success, or even greater success, is already in the Middle Bronze Age and earlier periods. And this is something that probably the stability of the Sidon population enables. However, there are also, I didn't really talk about a lot of the methodological limitations that we have with this stuff, which is something that we always underline and highlight in papers. And let's see. Okay. I'm probably going to dig my own grave with this, but it's okay because it's fun. And we're going to talk about one example. So this is like a case study of one burial and how difficult it is to say actually something really absolute or concrete about something. So this is a burial from the earliest phase in this site. It has been dubbed the Silver Man because it had a lot of silver with it. Also animal remains, And what is really interesting with this individual is the bronze weapons. And that's actually something that you might see in front of you, or you saw. It's these things called duckbill axes. And I had to scour the internet to find an example of a duckbill axe that has an actual handle. So this is someone who likes to do weapon reconstructions. Here is an image from the tomb of a tomb in Beni Hassan in Egypt. And this is said to portray a person from the Levantine area coming to Egypt, and they're holding an axe, but it's really smudged, but you can kind of see the outline, and that's what it's been suggested to have looked like. So the reconstruction, I think, is probably pretty correct on this stuff. And there are many different shapes for these duckbill axes as well, and these weapons in general. If you go to the National Museum, you see a whole host of different designs. Some of them are very wide, some of them are angular like this. And this is a tradition that has been connected to nails during the Bronze Age. And the consensus currently is that they are part of this elite male status. So they symbolize that someone was very important in the community, in their site, and they probably also had a lot of wealth. This was a huge movement across the Near East. So you have, this is how wide it was during the early Bronze Age already, and then it kind of, then it gets a little bit more concentrated during the early Middle Bronze Age, and then even further concentrated during the late Bronze Age, or late Middle Bronze Age. And, yeah. So this is kind of the meat and potato of my work. So what you get to do, or what you do, is you do an entire osteological analysis of the burial or the individual that you're looking at. Obviously, unfortunately, you can already see in the image that the silver man was pretty poorly preserved, and this is actually really common in these mud brick burials, especially in this time period. It seems that the mud brick does something, and maybe it traps water in, or maybe it traps all the gooey stuff from the body, so they cannot escape, and the bones themselves start to disintegrate much faster. So I think what was done is the osteologist on site did the sex estimation for this person, because usually what I would do is I would look at the pelvis, which is the most sexually dimorphic feature of a human skeleton. But this one was fairly broken. There were only a couple of pieces left. I was able to do an age estimation from a rib. So the sternal ends of the ribs, for instance, are good indicators of age. They're used in forensics as well. And then we did find one well-healed toe fracture from this person. Whether they had more fractures, it's difficult to say, again, because of that preservation. So again, those same questions about relatedness and stable isotopes. So here, so these are the teeth that I was able to use from this person. So again, the enamel, pretty great shape, but already you can see that the roots, which are a lower mineral content, are really eroded and degraded. And I did a couple of different analyses on this person, or a couple of different statistical tests, let's do it like that. And one of them is the same plot that you already saw of those time periods. So let's see, so these light blue ones these are the other weapon burials from the site. And then this dark blue one is our 27, our silver 9. So according to this plot, he looks like he's fairly separated from the other people, but then when we do a different type of war dendrogram analysis, it seems like they cluster together. And this is more just to highlight that how you treat your data impacts your results, and especially something like this biodistance analysis using morphological data, and because it requires a lot of statistical analysis and you're doing it on incomplete data sets as well. This is because archaeological data sets are never perfect. There's always more missing than there is present, unfortunately. But we do what we can. But this is just to highlight that they could be different, but they might also not be different. So again, like what we do is we go into the next step and we ask what are the other tests telling us. Here again is the mobility or migration or mobility data. So we have the strontium and the oxygen. So if you look at the strontium values here on the vertical one, it looks like the Silverman kind of clusters with everybody else, with all the other weapon burials. He looks like he's a little bit more separate in terms of oxygen, but oxygen is incredibly difficult to interpret, and that's because oxygen values come from drinking water, and drinking water values can come from, if it changes if you drink from a spring, if you drink from rainwater, or if you boil water, it changes the values. So you need to really know where people are getting the most of their drinking water, and it's requires a lot of kind of like this further work. Then I mentioned those nitrogen and hydrogen values before. So this is looking at dietary data, and this gives us an overall generic view of what people are eating, whether it's what kind of plants, is it C3 or C4? So this is a different kind of photosynthesis pathways, is the word that I was looking for. And then you also have, the nitrogen, which is protein, which comes from protein. So people who eat a lot of protein are way up high. When you look at this data, it looks like the 27 Silverman is already separated, or is higher than the rest of the weapon burials, but still pretty clustered with everybody else at the site. And then when you look at the data from even further back, so this is that same data, and this is where all the weapon burials would be. So they're not even like the highest values of the site. And then, interestingly, I mentioned fish before as something that people put in burials, and there's probably an assumption that people were eating fish. They are on the sea, it's right there, why wouldn't you? If people were eating fish, their values would be like further up here. And this is something interesting about Sidon, at least, is that despite being by the ocean, people were not eating, at least they were not eating marine fish, they were sticking to terrestrial diets. So they were eating mammals and, well, probably the things that they were putting in the burials. So you have goat, sheep, pig, bovine. And then, despite this person having all of that wealth and having this high nitrogen value, we could still see that, unfortunately you can't really see them in the picture, but there are 3 lines right here on this tooth. And these are called enamel hypoplasia lines. And they are formed when there is a disruption in your enamel formation during childhood. So these are caused by periods of some kind of physiological or even mental stress. So if you have something really dramatic in your life that shuts down your system, your teeth also stop growing, or there's a disruption in their growth. If this person was eating well, then maybe this is a sign of illnesses, because I think all these lines happen between the ages of 3 and 5, which is a common age to experience childhood illnesses. And yeah, if you ever need to convince anyone with vaccines, you can at least tell them, like, well, at least your kids' teeth will be pretty if they don't have measles or something. And then, lastly, we have all the burials plotted. So each one of these little dots is a different burial at the site. All of these light blue ones here are the other weapon burials, and this is the silver one. Again, not a lot of clustering or separation. However, what I did notice from these burials when I looked at them by phase is that people like to kind of bury close to the other burials in every stage or every stratum of the site. And maybe this is because you know that, okay, your friend is buried right there, so here there must be an empty spot or a free spot. And then they keep doing that until they kind of forget where everybody's buried, and then they move a little bit away, and then they occupy another area. And we do have multiple of these pits at the site where you might find like a few random or a few pieces of bone. And to me, these look like something that you quickly create when you accidentally nicked someone else's burial. So you go in, you go, oh no, I hit someone's feet. What do? You dig another hole, you put them in, tap the ground, nothing happened, it's all good, and you keep working. So to kind of put that in a nutshell, so when you have that 1,000 yard stare, or you can look at your data from far away, as long as you have enough of it, you can start to see patterns, even if you don't have a lot of really like high definition detail, but you have enough of it, the story starts to kind of tell itself to you. But then when you go into these individuals, it gets complicated, because now you really need to know the nitty-gritty of everything that you're doing. And I'm hoping that this is something that we'll be able to do in the future, maybe in the near future, is to start creating even higher detail information about the Sidon individuals, so that we can start like really digging into questions like these, like how are people connected to one another. And this is just to show that, so we went from over 5,000 years of history to just the Bronze Age, or the Middle Bronze Age, looking at population data into individuals. And I've only talked about like a small smidgen of the kind of information that we have available, and what we can do is still something that you can imagine. So, because I did not really talk about the jar burials, which are really interesting at this site, or the collective, the communal burials, which are also really, really interesting. So this is all stuff that we're going to be working on in the future, and I hope you keep in tune for that. So thank you.